Hey guys, so I just saw a question posted on the Neville Goddard subreddit in the new people area, like the beginners questions area, and I don't think I've ever made a video about this exactly, so I wanted to. Basically, the person was asking, what do I do? Like, so I've been good about staying in the state, and it was like pretty easy for a while, and now it's like, you know, it's getting harder to stay in the state, and I'm struggling with it today, and blah, 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 like that kind of thing. Like, what do I do when I'm trying to stay in the state of something, but, like, today I don't really, like, I'm having a hard time with it. And I just wanted to address this because I think understanding this, like, forget Neville Goddard, understanding what I'm about to say will have, for me personally, has completely changed, like, my experience of my whole life, especially from, you know, just sort of like the standpoint of how's everything going, if that makes sense. About 10 years ago, I started tracking my moods, because I would notice, like, I'd have these periods of time where I'd have like there would be days where I was just like, life is not worth living, and I would be in that mood all day, and like taking it seriously, like thinking that it was actually based on something in reality. And then I would wake up and it would be gone. And I was just like, what the fuck was that? And so after having had this happen like a few times, maybe for like, actually more like, after this had been going on for like a few years, let's just be real here. I think it was about that long. I was just like, you know what? I gotta start tracking this because this keeps happening and there's gotta be a pattern here and blah, blah, blah. So basically the bottom line is, after tracking myself, you know, how was my day today? How did I feel today? And especially like looking at these and other stuff too, like there would be periods of time where I was just like super starving all the time. And you know, at the time, this was like, I lost a bunch of weight in my late 30s. And before that, you know, I would have these periods of time where I was just like starving and feel like it was my fault and stuff, you know, and feel like like I was, you know, have like kind of berate myself for eating a lot those days and stuff. Like, it's crazy. And as I tracked all this stuff, I realized there's a physical reason behind all of this. Like, there's a predictable like cycle to all this stuff, which, if you're a woman watching this, I'm sure you can catch my drift here, but this happens to guys too. I didn't think it did, but my ex has recently been tracking his moods, and there seems to be, first of all, this is amazing, there does seem to be a pattern for him. He seems to have a 6-week cycle of just like, it's bizarre, of like being, you know, sort of like a mood crash, and then sort of like a bottoming out, and then rising back up to the top. He seems to have this thing happening. And for him, just tracking this, and for me too, like I was saying in the beginning of this video, it's just like observing it, just looking at what the 3D avatar is doing from an observer standpoint. It shifts everything. It takes the edge off of this whole human thing that's going on, because you realize that you're not that thing. And when you realize that you're basically like animating this meat suit, you know, and who knows exactly like where the fine line is between the meat suit and whatever's animating it. But, you know, like when you start to detach from this thing, you notice like all this shit going on with the 3D body and the 3D mind that is not you. And when you can kind of separate the two, it just like, it shifts you out of this base state where you're just experiencing everything and reacting to everything, and you're just like on this human roller coaster ride. It takes you out of that, and the longer you do it, the more you're not in it. Like, at this point, I don't know, I'm pretty far outside of my 3D avatar at this point, and whenever I start finding myself embroiled in it, you know what I mean, I want to go and figure out what's attaching me there and detach it, because it's such a more peaceful way of being, to not just be like this prisoner of this body all the time. And so for the question of falling out of the state, And what do you do when you just like find these periods of time where you you're just like not into it? My number one go-to would be let a little bit of time pass, because you might find that you let a couple days pass, you let it go, you stop focusing on it and thinking about it, shift your focus somewhere else, assume that you're being like chemically affected by something, whether you're male or female. If you're female, I don't know, I would definitely start tracking this immediately, because you know, this is pretty much a fact for women. Just assume that you're being you know, shit, did I eat Taco Bell yesterday? There's a good thing to ask yourself. Like, food affects you. What you eat affects your mood, and your mood affects your thoughts if you don't catch it. If you don't realize that the physical is having a thing, then you give all these you give all this credence to the thoughts that the physical state is producing. So the first thing I would do if you fall out of the state is detach a little bit and say, I think maybe I shouldn't give any importance to these thoughts I'm having. Like, maybe everything I think today, I should just go, you know what? It's being affected by the physical. So I'm not paying any attention to my thoughts today. I'm just going to like go get into a TV show. That's been a lifesaver for me. I don't watch TV much except for when I am purposely trying to kind of check out of 3D. God, it's a fucking lifesaver during periods where you're going through grief, you know? There's no value in just sitting around grieving all the time. Game of Thrones absolutely saved my life in the month after I had to put my cat that I'd had for 18 years down. God, that was like, oh my God, that was the worst grief I've ever felt, the worst separation and detachment. And then same thing when my dad died, I didn't have the same level of grief that I did with my cat, because, you know, it's just a different thing. It's a little innocent, awesome animal that you have like on your lap all day, every day for 18 years. And it's my dad, who I was kind of like distant from, and he lived a long life and all that stuff. I didn't experience this searing grief every minute of the day for months. It was different. It was just like, you know, it was just like the horrible process of going through his death, and then kind of a period of relief afterwards that it was over and that he hadn't suffered more. But then, you know, like the grief just would come here and there. And it was the same thing. It was the same thing. Just getting into TV alone was enough to just kind of snap me out of it. Because if you find a show you really like and you put your phone on the other side of the room, you'll suck into it eventually and just sort of exit, give your body and everything a break from this experience of whatever you're feeling. And same thing to a much lesser degree, of course, with the topic of this video, which is just the days that you have where you aren't feeling right. You know, if you can't change it, I didn't used to be somebody who would advise trying to change your emotions. I kind of viewed that as being unhealthy. But now, since I've been purposely shifting my emotional state, my feeling overall, just falling asleep in the feeling every night of everything is working out for me, you know, I feel so good, I did it, you know, everything is going so well. I've been purposely forcing myself, even if I don't wanna, even if I'm in a different mood because some other thing affected me during the day, I've been making myself do that right before bed, and the change is tremendous. Like, things have been happening, but my overall mood has just been so much better all the time. If you try to do that and it's just too much, and honestly, on like earlier this week, I had to force myself to do that a couple times because I experienced this thing I'm talking about right now. On Monday and Tuesday this week, I just was like so dissatisfied and bored. I just had this feeling like, I don't know, it was such an awful feeling. And I tried to rationalize it and analyze it. I was like, why am I feeling this way? Is there something wrong? I could not come up with anything where I was like, oh, that's what it is. This feeling is based on an actual thing. It was just like, there's no reason for me to be feeling this way. I did force myself right before bed to change that. But during the day, forget it, dude. You know, just forget it. I wasn't able to, I didn't even want to even try to overcome what was pretty obviously a physical thing, a chemical thing. Sometimes you just have to ride it out. You don't have to sit around trying to force yourself to get back into the state. You don't have to worry about a couple of bad days ruining the whole thing. That is not how this works. You're becoming a different person. This isn't a magic trick. When you're taking on a state, you're literally becoming somebody slightly different than yourself. And as long as you go back to that and move forward, there's no ruining it. You know, it's not, there's way too much magic trick bullshit stuff. A lot of this stuff is just really easy to understand when you put it in plain terms. You know, imagining yourself being the person who has the thing that you want. You're just moving into occupying that person's existence. And you're just, whatever that takes, you're just moving towards that. So a couple bad days, a couple days where you check out and watch TV and say, fuck it, or do something else or whatever, they don't ruin anything. And in fact, my opinion is that being able to do that, being able to recognize when it's the right time to just, you know, shutter the windows and wait for the storm to just pass while passing your time doing something else, that is an incredibly useful skill. It conserves so much of your mental energy. It shortens the duration, because if you sit around in these moods and start thinking from these moods, you know, as Neville says, like, you think from the end state of the thing you want. If you allow these things that just come, that will just pass, if you just fuck off and just let it be, if you start thinking from them and making decisions from them and undoing all of the mental work that you've been doing, that's when shit gets really bad. That can just completely knock you off course, completely. I mean, totally put you back to square one. So when you're not finding yourself able to occupy the state, despite putting forth a decent effort to try, just let it be. Let it be. And just go do something else. And especially if you can recognize, oh, this does kind of feel like a chemical thing. The more you notice this and become like the observer, the more you will be able to recognize it when it's happening, because you'll be like, I was fine yesterday, and now all of a sudden I'm totally dissatisfied today. I'm in this other state today. You'll go, okay, that's not based on anything in reality. That's this thing that I just need to ignore. You know, you just get good at it after a while, and when you do, it just makes everything that much more smooth sailing. For me, when I get in those moods, it's kind of like an excuse to just take a day off from everything. So I don't know, I've kind of spun it into a positive thing. If I find myself in this mood, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna do some things I like to do today. I'm gonna give myself permission to do some shit that maybe the rest of the time I kind of put to the side in favor of something that's a bigger priority or whatever. And yeah, that's I think pretty much the ideal way to handle it. If you're not able to kind of flip it on its head by generating a different feeling. That for me is not always, it just isn't worth it sometimes. You know, it's just too exhausting to try to fight against some of these days that just come. So anyway, I hope that helps somebody. Have a great day, guys. This was for you too. I mean, I think for women, like if you start tracking your moods, you'll find a pattern in there that might not be what you think it would be. But this is definitely the case for guys too. Guys definitely, Matt just had a day like this a few days too. He's like, I just woke up and I was pissy all day. I kept saying, what happened? He's like, nothing even happened. So this happens to guys too. It's a chemical thing. You're in a body. And yeah, I don't know. Have a great day.